Meanwhile, in Sumy region, anti-drone nets continue to be installed on highways. This was reported by the head of the Regional Military Administration, Ole Hrigorov. Such shelters should complicate aerial reconnaissance and provide protection against drones. Earlier, in an interview with Suspilna National Public Broadcaster, Hrigorov also reported that the region still needs to complete the construction of fortifications. Such construction continues almost daily. It is worth reminding that regional military administrations are responsible for the fortification equipment of the third line of defense, which is remote from the line of combat contact. The second line of defense is usually built by servicemen of the engineering troops of the support forces. The personnel of combined arms brigades equip their forward positions. In accordance with the order of the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, fortification groups are being established in operational tactical groupings of forces. By the way, since June 16th, the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, in its daily reports, has been naming the border area of the Sumy region as the North Slobozhansky Axis, and the Kharkiv direction has been renamed to the South Slobozhansky Axis. This was done due to the increase of the enemy activity in the border area of the Sumy region. Specification and a clearer division into axes will allow us to better inform society about the progress of repelling the full-scale armed aggression of the Russian Federation against Ukraine. Brigadier General Hennady Shapovalov has been appointed commander of the ground forces of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. The corresponding decree was signed by the President of Ukraine. Hennady Shapovalov was the head of the Ukrainian team in the NATO mission, which was responsible for coordinating the supply of military assistance to Ukraine. As a combat officer, Hennady Shapovalov went through all stages of military service, from tank platoon commander to commander of the 59th Kyiv Hanzyuk Separate Motorized Infantry Brigade. In April last year, Hennady Shapovalov was appointed commander of the Operational Command South. During the same period, until February of this year, he commanded the Tvraya operational group of troops. Hennady Shapovalov graduated from the Institute for Tank Troops at Kharkiv State Polytechnic University and the Command and Staff Institute of Troop Application at the National Defense University of Ukraine. He also studied at the United States Army War College, where senior officers of the US Army are trained. As noted in the General Staff, the commander of the Land Forces is primarily called upon to increase the combat capability of the Army, improve the mobilization system and training of military personnel, and implement innovative approaches to management in accordance with NATO standards. The Czech Republic plans to continue supplying heavy ammunition to Ukraine next year. Czech Foreign Minister Jan Lipavsky said in an interview with Bloomberg. According to him, the supply of ammunition from other countries has already significantly improved the position of the Ukrainian military. The Czech minister said the program, which is funded by 11 countries, would allow for the delivery of 1.8 million rounds of ammunition this year. However, its further implementation would depend on the results of the Czech parliamentary elections scheduled for October. Lipavsky stressed that political support for the initiative was critical for Ukraine. Let us remind that the Czech initiative for the supply of heavy ammunition to Ukraine began in February 2024. Its goal is the prompt supply of artillery shells to Ukraine, mainly of 155 and 122 mm caliber, from third countries outside the EU. This week, the Russians continued their massive strikes against Ukrainian cities. On the night of June 16th, the enemy launched 138 Shahed attack UAVs and decoy drones of various types. As reported by the Air Force of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, the main direction of the attack was the Donetsk region. Air defense neutralized 125 enemy UAVs. On Tuesday night, a combined strike was launched against Ukraine. The main target was Kyiv. Besides that, the enemy targeted Odessa, Zaporizhzhia, Chernihiv, Zhytomyr, Kirovohrad, Mykolaiv, and Kyiv regions. In the capital of Ukraine, Russian missile hit a 9-story residential building, completely destroying a section of the building. The bodies of 23 people were pulled from under the rubble. In total, the Russian night attack on Kyiv claimed 28 lives. 134 people were injured. June 18th was declared a day of mourning in Kyiv. The Air Force Command of the Armed Forces of Ukraine determined that on the night of June 17th, the enemy launched a total of 32 missiles and 440 Shahed-type strike UAVs and various decay drones. The Ukrainian Defense Forces neutralized 402 UAVs and 26 missiles. Enemy air attack assets were recorded hitting 10 locations, and downed aerial weapons or their fragments were reported in 34 locations. Yuri Ignat, head of the Communications Department of the Air Force Command of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, speaks. This time there were many Shahed, out of all 440 UAVs. About 280 were Shahed-type UAVs, and a huge number of aerial assets attacked Kyiv from different directions. Many missiles were shot down, and 3 missiles disappeared from radars. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky stressed that the whole world, the US and Europe, must finally react the way a civilized society reacts to terrorists. It's bad when the powerful of this world turn a blind eye to this. We are contacting all partners at all possible levels to ensure an appropriate response. It's the terrorists who should feel the pain, not normal, peaceful people, the president added. As noted by the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, the Russian occupiers continue to systematically and deliberately violate the norms of international humanitarian law and the rules of war, committing large-scale and brutal crimes on the territory of Ukraine. The targeted destruction of civilian infrastructure, attacks on residential areas, hospitals and educational institutions, the use of prohibited weapons, torture and execution of prisoners of war, and the forced displacement of civilians, including children. All of these are not random incidents, but components of a consistent terrorist strategy that grossly contradicts all norms of international law, morality, and humanity. Russian attacks continued all week. There are dead and injured in Odessa. Among the injured are 3 rescuers who were trapped under the collapse of a residential building during the fire. 3 floors of a 23-story skyscraper and 5 other residential buildings were also on fire. At least 4 civilians, including 2 minors, were injured in a drone attack on Kharkiv. The Security Service of Ukraine has exposed and detained a Russian agent in the ranks of the Defense Forces who was spying on the location of Ukrainian Neptune anti-ship missile systems. This was reported by the press service of the Security Service of Ukraine. According to the investigation, the agent turned out to be a 33-year-old mobilized Ukrainian serviceman who served in a unit guarding the Neptune missile systems in southern Ukraine. He was recruited by representatives of the Russian GRU. According to the SSU, the mole's task was to transmit the exact geolocation of his unit to the enemy. In the event of a successful transmission of the coordinates, the enemy planned to launch an airstrike using kamikaze drones and cruise missiles. The SSU military counterintelligence, with the approval of the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine and the Commander of the Navy, promptly exposed the traitor. He was detained while attempting to deliver another intelligence report to the occupiers. The Kremlin is launching a strategy of cultural cleansing in the occupied territories. According to the press service of the Foreign Intelligence Service of Ukraine, Russia is preparing to approve an updated strategy of state national policy, which focuses on Russian culture and language, including in the occupied territories. Moscow openly admits that through Russification, propaganda, and cultural cleansing, it seeks to form 95% of the so-called all-Russian identity in 10 years, the report says. As noted, the document outlines 2 main vectors. These include, in particular, the Russification of the occupied territories, as well as the strengthening of anti-migrant policy under the guise of fighting extremism. Russia is expanding its military presence in the Arctic and preparing a springboard for resource expansion, said Andriy Chernyak, a representative of the main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine. The Kremlin is trying to do this under the guise of scientific activity, and one of the research institutes is the instrument. The project aims to conduct geological exploration of new gas and oil fields, analyze the ice situation in the North Sea for the purpose of laying shipping routes. At the same time, Russia installs communications equipment, in particular satellite communication systems, which can be used to coordinate Arctic operations of the Russian Northern Fleet and ensure the operations of unmanned systems. If the international community continues to underestimate these processes, the North may become the next zone of tension, emphasized Andriy Chernyak, a representative of the military intelligence. On June 15th, units of the Special Operations Forces of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, in cooperation with other components of the Defense Forces, struck a UAV production facility in Yelabuga, Republic of Tatarstan, Russian Federation. This military-industrial complex facility of the Russian occupiers is used to manufacture, test, and launch strike drones across the territory of Ukraine, in particular targeting energy and civilian infrastructure. It has been confirmed that the attack assets have reached the target area, the General Staff reported. Two of the latest Russian artillery reconnaissance systems, Yastreb AV, were hit by the RAID battalion of the Unmanned Systems Forces. The cost of each radar system is about $250 million. $500 million is not just the cost of equipment, it is the cost of the enemy's blindness. And our joy, the RAID battalion emphasized. Yastreb AV is called the most modern Russian radar system, which is used to detect artillery firing positions. Using radar, the system is capable of tracking the trajectory of enemy missiles and calculate the exact coordinates of artillery positions. This data is transmitted to the artillery to destroy the positions. The Defense Forces destroyed a Russian heavy flamethrower system, StratCom, in the Kyiv region. This success was achieved by strike drone operators from the Revenge Brigade of the State Border Guard Service. The fighters also destroyed an enemy tank and ground robotic system, as well as enemy vehicles. StratCom is considered one of the most destructive non-nuclear weapon systems in the Russian arsenal. It uses thermobaric ammunition, which causes a powerful blast wave and high temperatures. At the same time, the system causes devastating damage to both fortifications and manpower. As of this spring, investigators had confirmation that during the full-scale invasion, the Russian army permanently lost 26 such or similar systems in Ukraine. Iran is ready to stop striking Israel if Israel stops its attacks. This was stated by Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi. "We are defending ourselves. Our defense is completely legitimate. This defense is our response to aggression. If the aggression stops, naturally our responses will also stop," he was quoted as saying by Al Arabiya. The Iranian foreign minister also said that Tehran is ready to conclude an agreement aimed at preventing Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons and their development. Al Jazeera reports. "We firmly believe that we do not want to possess nuclear weapons," he noted. However, Abbas Araghchi opposes depriving Iran of the right to develop a nuclear program for peaceful purposes. Meanwhile, the Israeli military said that on Thursday night it struck an inactive nuclear reactor near the city of Arak in Iran and a nuclear weapons development center near the city of Natanz. According to the Israel Defense Forces, 40 fighter jets dropped 100 munitions on dozens of Iranian military sites in Tehran and other areas of Iran. According to the Israeli military, a critical component of the nuclear reactor was hit: the core containment structure, which is important for the production of plutonium used in nuclear weapons. There were no reports of radiation threat from the strikes. Meanwhile, several Iranian missiles hit Israeli settlements on Thursday morning, including a hospital in the south of the country. In the United Kingdom, for the first time, a woman will head the Secret Intelligence Service, better known as MI6, Reuters reports. 47-year-old Blaise Metraweli, who is now head of technology and known as Q, has spent most of her career in operational roles in the Middle East and Europe. Her codename will be C after her appointment, which is due to take place in the autumn. www.reuters.com/world.uk. Britain appoints first female head, MI6 spy agency, 2025, 06, 15 DARS, MI6, is currently headed by Richard Moore. Prime Minister Keir Starmer said Metrovelli's appointment comes at a time when Britain is facing threats of an unprecedented scale. As is known, the head of the British government said that the country's new defence strategy will include warfighting readiness, as this, in his opinion, is the most effective way to deter threats. He stated this in early June during the presentation of the Strategic Defence Review. And finally, a new service was introduced in the Army Plus app. From now on, thanks to multi-signature, a military unit commander can process dozens of reports from subordinates. As reported by the Ministry of Defence, you can select up to 40 reports at once and agree on them simultaneously, thanks to Action.Signature or Smart ID. It is impossible to reject reports en masse because each rejection requires an explanation. The new service is designed to reduce the administrative burden on the military. It is worth reminding that electronic reports feature in the Army Plus application were introduced in August last year. During this time, 570,000 reports were fully processed. Most of them were approved. Among the most popular are healthcare, annual leave, and change of place of service, the Ministry of Defence reports.